Yeah. Wait. Oh, I'm on. Okay, here we go. Uh, thanks, thanks everyone. Both, I'm on a pretty slow Wi-Fi, so uh, just and the microphone is in these headphones, so it's the sound isn't going to be great. But I want it, and I'm not at home, so I just wanted to make sure that I said something. Just had a brief office hours to say a few things. And hey, going back to what I was saying on the chat. Hey, let me know if if my if the audio is fine and video is fine because I can't see it on my phone. The camera's on, but I really see very little. All right, man. So I'll keep watching the chat. Um, Going back to what I was saying about class yesterday, it's one of these things that is a conversation that I find to be really interesting, just talking to these students, right? I mean, I could have talked to the Tanaka from Zimbabwe. I wanted to ask him a lot about Mugabe and how Zimbabweans are thinking about that and everything that happened in terms of the land takings, you know. I don't know if you're not familiar with that, it's kind of really a powerful shift um, that happened about 20 years ago. And anyway, there's so many things to talk about, more about Malaysia, but in the end, I never know if it's how interesting it is for folks. It's interesting for me, but uh, I don't know. Um, Next class, tomorrow's class, we're going to talk about LGBT issues, and because it's kind of interesting how it is in so many ways has become a non-issue here at a place like Penn State. And I say non-issue, I mean, meaning that it's just not what it used to be. And I'm just curious about how students are experiencing um, it, issues related to the queer community. So it's just so different, man. It's such a different world. That I mean, I know there's some homophobia, distrust, I don't know, whatever there is, but it's so different from 20, 30 years ago. It's so different. So anyway, that's we're going to have a conversation because I just want to hear like what students are thinking, and I want to talk about some, uh, just touch on, um, yeah, non-binary issues and transitioning and all of that. So anyway, I just want to see what the students are thinking. So that's where we're at. Um, anyway, um, a weird interference in the background. Yeah, I don't know what I don't know what Jeff. I don't know what I can do about that. There's a weird. I think the problem is I'm on a fairly slow internet connection, and I can't even like on my phone. Where you know Talk Studio's rocking on my phone that's sitting here, and I'm looking at my computer, but both are slow. In fact, I don't even see myself in my phone. The timer's actually still going on, so whatever. We're just gonna. Uh, um, I'm using the mic, Jeff. I'm using the mic on my headphones, so it's not very good. I suppose I could probably. Hang on. Let me see if I just move it to there. See if that mic improves at all. Let me know. All right, I'll go back to the other one. Um, so anyway, I'm curious about for tomorrow's class. There's so many topics uh, that we could talk about, and yeah, so much. It's really unfortunate. We really have 2 days left, and then on the final day we'll have about 45 minutes of Q&A.
And you know what would be really interesting? What would be good is to really take a lot of questions on that last day, or take some questions from the stream. It would be nice. But whatever. And then we're off. Jeff and I, we're going to be doing some things over the summer, at least once a week. But I'll be in Korea for most of May, and then back in the States, and then I'm back in Korea in June, and then back in the States, and I'm going to down to Colombia. Just a lot of travel. So, so summer's going to be a little bit different, but we'll miss not being in the classroom, and we don't have these environments, and that changes things. Hey, so listen, so here's a question. Greg is asking, will the balkanization of gender and sexuality lead to civil war? No, I don't think so, but it is. I just think I think we're at a particularly provocative moment right now. And I think what we see with social change and social movements is a lot of like just kind of a battle, right? But, if things start, they get combative, and then they smooth out. And I think we're still in sort of a combative place with regard to the issues related to non-binary and to everything that is not gay or straight, everything. And so we're in a place where we're just trying to figure it out, and like how to do these things, how to do the work around people who are non-binary and what that means, and how we should or could accommodate for them. And I think that calls for what happens is it generates a kind of an activist stance necessarily, right? I mean, that's the nature of it, right? You're sort of inserting yourself into a system that is only going to be relatively open, and that just requires activism. That's the nature of it, and that's okay. So when I see, gender, like queer activists really pushing new definitions of gender, that as a sociologist, I mean, for me, it's fascinating. It has a certain value. It definitely has a value, and it's really important for breaking open the system and however we do it. At World in Conversation, and so the activism is this kind of thing, right? At World in Conversation, we have students take a survey at the end of their session, their 90-minute dialogue. And for years, we set up, and it's like, how do you identify man, or, male, female, let's say, right? And then it's like, okay, hang on, it's man, woman, and then man, woman, non-binary. And then none of the above. I don't know. We had several categories. But I remember like 4 years ago, we had something like 15,000 responses, because something in the nature of 15,000 people went through the dialogues, and not a single person chose anything other than male or female, or man or woman. I think we had it, right? Not a single person out of like 15,000, which is really kind of shocking in a way. But it also, what it means is that 15,000 people, when they read that question, had to read. I mean, it's not a big deal, right? But read 3 categories: man, woman, non-binary, or however we did it. And that means 15,000 people were thinking somehow that, whoa, this is a third category on a survey. And so therefore, there must be a lot of people, there must be a fair number of people who are choosing that third category. That's neither man nor woman, male nor female. And so in people's minds, these 15,000 people, in their minds, they're opening space for something other than man or woman. so it seems to them like, well, this is a big conversation here, because like obviously they're putting it on, this is a separate category, so it must be a lot of people. It wasn't a single person, zero. And that's not a problem per se, right? It's like whatever, it took, you know, a millisecond for your eyes to scan over that third category and decide that's not the category I'm choosing. But what it does is it creates the sense that there's so many, that this is a really significant number of people in society, because you start seeing it everywhere, because everybody is using that kind of category, right? So that alternative, you know, that third one. But in fact, not many people at all are identifying in that way or would use that category. You know, what's your primary orientation, right? Or how you describe yourself or label yourself. So, although that's not to say, I mean, I'm finding, I mean, it's growing, you know what I mean? The number of people are growing, the number of students I have who identify as non-binary in some way is growing. So the point being, it's just really, we sometimes our perception of what's really happening in the world is not matching what's actually really happening in the world. And so, which is why when you ask people, if you just ask people for a number, put down a percentage, right? To the average American, we do a survey of 1,200 Americans, right? Adults, let's just say, and in this country, we say, hey, give us a percentage, an actual number. What percentage of the U.S. population is gay or lesbian, LGBT, let's say, right? The average answer will be about 25. And of course, the number is about 3.5%, right? But the average answer is 25. And I think the average answer is high because we just see the marks, the sort of the indicators of gay pride so many places. We see conversations about related to gay pride. We see it's just it's just a thing. Every entity, every business, every organization is marking that. And so which is lovely. It's but the fact that we see it everywhere we turn, we see see it so often. Like I have in my neighborhood, which is pride flags, for that, and in front of people's houses who I know are straight, but maybe their kids are, or their brother-in-law, or God knows who knows, right? So the point being, it's just the conversation itself or the reality doesn't always shape what it is that people are observing. And so we have a misalignment with what we imagine to be true and what is actually true. And I don't think it's not inherently a problem, but this conversation about the trans community, it's such a big conversation for such a small, tiny number of people. And you think about how much energy it just sucks up in the mind sphere, right? It's so much. So many people are talking and having these conversations and so on, and yet it's such a tiny fraction of the population that we're really talking about. Which isn't, it's not inherently a problem. I'm not criticizing that per se, but I'm saying it's going to lead to misperceptions about how many people there are in the trans community, because everybody's talking about it. So wow, there must be a whole lot of people. And in fact, there really are not. It's a very, very tiny number of people. So I find that to be, I mean, that's something that we have to reckon with. So in any case, there have been a by the way, that's just something I think is really valuable, just to think about how often it's like crime, this thing I'm talking about, right? Crime, the things, the action, the things that show up on the front page of the newspaper. Whatever's on the front page, the news is the uncommon stuff, right? Because that's why it makes the front page. So I just think it's really notable to think about that, to be tuned into it for all of us, really. Okay. Okay. All right, hang on. I'm gonna. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Okay, hang on. I'm gonna see if I. Uh, yeah, okay. Triple Z says I'm in the South, and there are more pride flags than Confederate flags. Yeah, yeah. I don't doubt that at all. And like this idea, and that says something about how far we've come. Like how much. That's what I'm really curious about with my students. The kinds of things that they, in a way, kind of see as non-issues. Uh, yeah, what are they? And I'm wondering, I'm really curious about the degree to which this really is an issue or a non-issue, right? I mean, obviously it's an issue to some people, but um, yeah, so I don't find it really, um, yeah. Hey, JG, you mentioned social contagion as a theory in social psychology. It explains how people's thoughts, emotions, and behaviors can be influenced by those around them. I was so I'm not sure who above you're talking to, but I just want to say something. I had the opportunity this past weekend. Lori and I went up to a conference in Toronto um, on extremism and democracy and the degree to which democracy is being undermined. The Canadians, it was kind of we were part of a think tank of Canadians that were putting together a white paper for the Canadian government in thinking about foreign interference in democratic processes in Canada, or processes, as they would say. And so one person who was there was this scholar, writer, thinker. I'm not sure. He's sort of a public intellectual, although he does therapy. His name is Stephen Hassan, and he's was formerly. I'm going to have him on the stream at some point. We're going to do something in the fall with him for sure. He was had joined the Moonies when he was young, a teenager, and was in the Moonies for quite a while, and then got out and got deprogrammed and like really intense. So he spent his whole life trying to understand cults and and everything that is connected to cults. And so he and I started talking a fair amount about social contagion and transitioning, and the number of people he has spoken to, many people, done lots of interviews with people who have transitioned, male to female, female to male, and detransitioned. Like that's his thing. Like those who had decided, hey, I thought this was the path for me, but it turns out it wasn't a path. There was a group on campus that brought a young woman in on Monday to speak who had detransitioned. She had moved female to male, had transitioned over, was taking um, hormone blockers and had top surgery, but then to realize that that wasn't really right for her, and then she has now transitioned back, but um, but not fully. I mean, she had her breasts removed, and but is now trying to get her body back in alignment after taking hormone blockers and so on. So, but Stephen was talking, he and I were talking about the contagion effect, and it's something that I see now. I'm seeing with a lot of young people. Like you're in this space, you're not really sure what what's going on, as we all are when we're teenagers, right? We're lost. We're trying to figure it all out. Maybe we don't fit in here. We don't fit in there. And there's people around us trying to make sense of it and what's going on, right? And I'm uncomfortable in my body. I'm uncomfortable in so many different ways. I mean, it's really tough being, going from like 13 to, I don't know, 25 probably, but nonetheless 13 to 17 or 18 or something. And so he was talking about how in all these interviews of people who had detransitioned, And he's a very thoughtful person. You know, he's trying to understand cults. So he's understanding this kind of how contagion happens. Like you sort of get pulled into a way of thinking. And then when you're surrounded by so many other people who are thinking the same, who are all thinking the same, you know, you just become part of them. It's such a fascinating process. And, you know, we all have this in different ways, in different aspects of our lives. Those of us who have joined a church or joined some group or got really involved in something, maybe it was like a golf league or a bowling league or who knows what, right? Um, or suddenly a group of people at work who watched Game of Thrones religiously, you know, and then you're talking about it every day and you're just pulled in thinking somehow that this is them, and this becomes a really important part of life. But he was talking about all these folks who transitioned and really just felt like we're pretty certain that this was a path for them. You know, they were, it was beyond body dysmorphia. I mean, it was body dysmorphia, like feeling like they were in the wrong body. It was just something was completely off. But with so many people around them thinking very similarly, this contagion process happened, and it happens with human beings, right? This is the nature of it, right? So there are so many. I see with my students a lot who just growing numbers of students who identify as pansexual or asexual or non-binary, and you know they don't really even know what it means, what they're thinking. They just know that they just don't feel like they're cisgendered, meaning that they are the gender of the body that they have, right? I'm born with a male body. I feel male. I connect to the male sense, the sensibilities of how sociologically we define what is and is not male, and uh, and I'm just in alignment with that. And there just so many more people who are young people who are just kind of sort of abandoning that, or they're opening themselves up to another way of thinking about things, which is what we should be doing when we're between the ages of 13 to 17 or whatever, unless you were my child. And it's like, just think in the very straight and narrow path. I don't want to deal with all the craziness and insanity. But and how many people, you know, get past that and then we go backwards, and now, you know, we saw, like, for quite a number of years we've really opened up to let following, you know, just following, let this happen. And then we started a huge conversation um, uh, that involved being open to people who don't feel like they are really in alignment in terms of their manness or womanness or maleness or femaleness. And that's fine, like that makes a lot of sense. Um but it's like you really got to hold out and let people just be uncomfortable for quite a number of years before we really see what happens and what should happen. But in any case, Stephen was really kind of fascinating as he was kind of noting the similarities in this kind of cultish like behavior, or the social contagion that happens with people in so many different aspects of social life, but including gender identifiers, you know. And so anyway, that's that. So um but this is okay, right? It's not any one. This is what I'm always trying to say sociologically. It's not, there's no conspiracy happening. There's no there's no one person at fault. All of these things that happen, like right now, that we are push that we've become really, really open to trans issues and non-binary identification. We've become really open with that. And because we've become really open, it's going to pull people in to those identifiers for themselves, people who are going to maybe a little more quickly grab onto an identifier and decide, hey, I'm actually, uh, I really feel like I need to start transitioning from male to female, or female to male, or man to woman, woman to man, whatever it is. And maybe it's like it happens a little fast, and maybe it's like slow it down, but we got on a wave here, going back about 8 or 10 years ago, and we're really riding that wave, and the wave got stronger. But that's what happens sociologically. Like, you can't, there's no one to blame. It's just, and what we're going to see is we're going to back off that a little bit as the conversation kind of slows down, and there's a little less intensity, and people aren't in school board meetings, raising their fist at all the ways in which this is a problem, and then leads other people to respond in this heavy-handed way, and then it feels like there's like these two sides are fighting it out, and it feels like it's a major issue, when in fact it's like 1/1000th of the population or something like that, right? It's just like, relax, everybody. But it's nobody's fault, and I think I'm always trying to say that these are all just sociological processes, that it's just okay. We'll work it out, you know. Just like we're gonna work out, when men transition to being women and then want to play in the sports leagues, women's sports leagues, right? Like, swimming, let's say. That was an issue a few years ago. And then these formerly men who are going to have bigger bodies, you gotta take like testosterone blockers, right? So they don't have the advantage. And then their testosterone has to be within a certain range, so they don't have a great advantage over the women, because they've transitioned, but they still have bodies of men, right? And so they're going to be faster than women, because that's the nature of how it is to be a man on average, when you're a premier athlete. And so we'll work all that out. It's getting worked out now, and we'll continue to work it out. And 15 years from now, we'll look back and we'll say, okay, that was okay. We got to a level of fairness, and we kind of know how to manage this and work with it. And it's happening anyway. When you hear about the fact that, like, women, um, there's a man a, a woman who was a man and is now swimming on the varsity swim team at UPenn or wherever it is. And we feel like, oh my God, that's so unfair. But what we don't see behind the scenes is how many regulations are being put in place and how they're being adjusted. It's like, so this person has to take testosterone blockers, right? To like lower those testosterone levels so their muscles don't have the same power that they would if normally with a man competing against a woman. And but the NCAA, for example, is like really working that, and they're running tests and just trying to figure it out at some level. And then you think like, well, why should that person compete at all if the person was a man, was competing on a men's swimming team, and now transitioned to being a woman and is competing against women? It's like, why should they be allowed to compete at all? Well, why shouldn't they, right? I mean, you can make an argument for, well, why shouldn't they be allowed to compete? They swim, or so anyway. It's just, it's for me, all these things are absolutely fascinating, and it's all good. We'll work it out. We work it out. We work out most everything. So, all right. So hang on. Let me see here. Let me see if I. Oh man, I don't. All right. I'm trying to see. Yeah. So Triple Z says, yeah, it doesn't solve for skeletal structure and biological differences like larger hearts and lungs and muscles. Yeah, absolutely. And so it doesn't solve for that. But what I think what I want to say is these things don't, when you read about these kinds of things and the debates that are happening, so like swimmers, right? People are really working on trying to figure out how to do this, how to move forward in a way that's equitable and fair. There are a lot of people who are very involved and bringing science to it. And so, yeah, there's larger skeletal structure, but, so maybe, longer arms, right? So if you're a swimmer, the arms are really, really important, or the legs. So, yeah, you got to figure it out, maybe I don't know. It's the point being, I'm always, the reason you don't see me getting like kind of losing my mind over a lot of things is because I tend to focus on the ways in which it's going to be okay. There may not be adults in charge of a lot of things, but there are adults in charge of other things, and they're largely doing their best to try to make it work. Just like I am doing my best in my class, to be fair. I don't always have that. So Triple Z says, why even have a division between men and women in sports? Well, we have a division because their bodies are so different. Yeah. And again, so you got these rare cases where people transition from one to another. Listen, women athletes who transition to being men, you don't hear about this. That happens, and they compete against men, and they almost across, unless it's a certain things like, I mean, if it's a, a a sport that requires a lot of athleticism. I mean, not like table tennis. There's athleticism there, but it's like it's quickness. It's a different kind of thing. It's not like basketball and swimming and wrestling, and rugby. So, but we don't hear about men who transition and become women and then continue to compete because they lose. There's no unfair advantage. Almost across the board, they're not going to compete as well with the men. So, but it's the other way around. Yeah. And so we have these divisions because bodies are different and they really matter. Yeah, and it's those check boxes that drive the divisions and certain policies that we create. So Jay Wilson saying that, yeah, I think so. We'll figure it out. It's never going to be perfect, but in a way it's kind of, but I don't know, like it's pretty cool that we're a human species who say, just think about it like this, right? So here we are, the species that says, hey, some of us, we're these spirits, right? Like you're looking at me right now and through this camera, and you're seeing me, right? Wearing my Rutgers shirt, by the way. Well, you don't see me. You don't hear me either. I mean, you hear this voice that's coming out of me, and you see this body, but it's not me. I am this spirit that's sort of locked inside here, right? The spirit that has kind of lived in this body and developed vocal cords and vocalizations and learned a language and learned to think in a certain way and put, the circuitry in my brain got kind of set up. And so there I am, right? Well, isn't it pretty cool that some of us our spirits got inside of these bodies, and the spirits didn't adjust well to the male body or to the man body or the woman body, right? And it just didn't adjust well. It didn't sit. Maybe the spirit came in at just the wrong one. The spirit was like really needed. It's like a male's. I don't know. I have no idea. It's too cosmic. It's too awesome I just think about it. It's cool, right? So maybe but that happens. And so here we are as a species, like in a culture, certainly in so many parts of the world, who are saying like, hey, that's okay, right? And historically speaking, third culture or third genders have been really almost universally held up and valued. The idea that, a person could be a mix of male and female has been highly valued throughout history, right? I mean, going back to very traditional, including hunting and gathering societies, and we see this in traditional religions, right? The anthropologists just note it time and time again. And so here are these the male, the man and the woman, the male and female come together, right? And there's some kind of different type of mix. Why wouldn't that be highly elevated? You know, someone who could live in both the male and the female form, that's awesome. You know, like why wouldn't that be seen in a certain way? You know, it's like speaking multiple languages or being able to think, like move your eyes in two completely different directions. I don't know. I mean, it's like, why wouldn't that be elevated? So we live in a world in which we can do that and we adjust to it and we're able to say, huh, all right, maybe I can see that, you know, that, okay, you know, or uh, it's pretty amazing that we are able to hold that. And to the degree to which we do not get really freaked out by it and live with it and then say like, wow, okay, so now we have this, we're going to have to adjust our the way all these other parts of social life for this. You know, like when I was in Canada, everywhere I went were, not everywhere, but damn near everywhere in Toronto, multi-gender bathrooms, gender neutral bathrooms. Man, I'm going into the bathroom and this I walk in the bathroom to wash my hands and this woman comes out of the stall. And I'm like, oh, all right. And I'm washing my hands, and then the other stall, a man comes out of that stall. But then I'm standing there washing my hands next to a woman who's washing her hands. And we're in this very tiny little bathroom. And it's like, all right, there it is, whatever, it's okay. And everyone I went into was like that. Or it seemed like it, actually, to be perfectly honest with you. It seemed like everyone. And it's okay, we can adjust to that. It's all right. But I have to say that it was when the very first woman, when I went into this bathroom, because it was fairly small, the woman walked out of the stall. I was like, oh, I must be in the wrong place. But she didn't even make any motion at all. She looked at me and just went over to the sink to wash her hands. So then very quickly like that, I realized, oh, I'm not, it's okay. Like this was gender neutral or all gender bathroom, whatever. And so yeah, we can do this, you know, we can make it work. We do. And that's what doesn't cease to surprise me about people. So I don't need to get freaked out by it. And yeah, hang on, uncomfortably nosy. Yes, gender neutral stuff should be a thing. Statistically, men are the problem, so let's focus on making better men. Yeah, I felt like, huh, it's yeah, I don't know, just it's okay. I felt really connected, like we were in it together, you know. So, uh, yeah. Okay. Um, yeah. So John Blackmore, you're saying that, yeah, almost all men are stronger than almost all women. Yeah, it's due to human biology. Yeah, I mean that's the nature of it. It's the muscles and bone structure and everything. Um, it matters, you know. And I don't think, you know. So I wonder. Recently, the past few days, I've seen a lot about women's NCAA, women's basketball, and the Women's Basketball Association (WBA) compared to the NBA, and how much women are making and how much they're earning compared to men, right? So this young woman, Caitlin Clark, who's the #1 pick and has done so much for women's basketball, but you know her salary is going to be 77,000 or 78,000 or something like that, compared to what it would be if she was the number one pick in the NBA as a man. And then I think, well, why do people watch men's basketball more than women's basketball? Because women's basketball is, it's also interesting, but why do we see this again and again? You know, that men so often attract more viewers. And so, people are really incensed about that. And I think, well, if you're incensed about that, then go to the women's basketball games and pay more money for the tickets. I mean, it's kind of what it is, right? If the demand is there, if people are interested in it, then you'll pay more and you'll go more often. But if you think about, like, in the NBA, how many go to an NBA game, and you ask women who are there, like, hey, why aren't ask people, like, hey, what do you think about the disparity between men's and women's professional basketball? And people are, because we live in the world we live in, most people will say, like, oh, that's not fair, it's not equal. Well, then why are you here at the men's game? Go to the women's. Do you have season tickets to the women's basketball games in your city or whatever? I mean, in the end, those are the kind of questions we have to ask. And in the end, probably the men's game is not probably the men's game is faster. It's I can't say there's more athleticism, because that's not the case at all. It's just, it's faster. Men are stronger, they're faster, they're like, there's more happening. Maybe that's just a game that just people are more attracted to. Or maybe it's pure, and not or, I'm going to say, and there's a sociological thing happening here, that people are socialized in this world of men playing basketball and the men's game being just so much better. But if you think about it, people are throwing a ball through a hoop and tallying up points. And you're sort of, all the things that happen when you get to, when you're just getting that ball into the hoop, right? So people are doing all sorts of things. So I was watching the other day a women's game in the NCAA tournament, and I was just watching what women were doing, like with their bodies, to make this happen. And I thought, I was just identifying all these places that I said, that was pretty cool. Like, oh, what she did right there, the athleticism, the stuff, it was like, it really drew me in to say, oh, that's pretty fascinating. And so what I realized was, the game is different than the men's game, because the men's game, people are jumping higher and people are doing else, but that doesn't make the game more interesting. The game itself is really interesting, but it's interesting in different ways. So the athleticism that I was watching among the women seemed to be just different than the athleticism that I was observing among the men. It wasn't better, it wasn't worse, it wasn't anything. It was just different. And then I was thinking, as a sociologist, maybe it's just about our mind and convincing ourselves, or me, it would be convincing myself, that watching women play basketball is just as entertaining and fascinating and awe-inspiring, whatever, as watching men. Awe-inspiring, like when I watch World Wrestling, World Federation or whatever, so-called professional wrestling, and I'm watching these guys do dives off of the ropes, and like, oh my God, the athleticism they bring to that. I mean, it's incredibly entertaining. Well, it's dumb. The storylines are really stupid. The whole thing is stupid. It's not stupid, but it's just silly that it's really poor. It's like a theater that's poorly written. The scripts and everything. It's like, oh, dude, the acting is pretty terrible in terms of, like, the things people say. But the acting in terms of athleticism was like, holy shit! Like, did that person really just do a backflip off of the top of the rope and land on that other guy? Like, did that really just happen? Like, or land on their back in the middle of the ring and have two other people like slam down on top of them. Like, holy smokes. So in any case, back to women. So maybe I was thinking, maybe in my mind, I just have to shift a little bit how I see that. And then be like, oh, so if I'm going to decide, hey, am I going to go into professional women, go watch professional women basketball players play a game, or professional men basketball players play a game? If I adjust my thinking to what I'm looking at and what I'm interested in, I could imagine getting to the point where I would say, no, I'd rather see women play than men play because it's kind of more interesting to watch the game. And sometimes it's like the men's game when I watch NBA games, which I don't very often, but sometimes I just turn it on my phone. It's just they're so it's just like they run down and shoot the ball and run down and shoot the ball. It's like nothing going on. Like it's just there's something, it's so smooth, it's so something that I'm just thinking it's not even really, it's no longer interesting to me. And I found watching women play it actually in some ways opens up to be more interesting, more entertaining, I guess I would say. So anyway, that's the thing. Okay, I know that all came from uh, John Blackmore's idea of men's bodies and all. So um, um, so I guess I guess I'm just sort of revealing the kinds of thoughts that I have, like trying to always be outside the box, not following um, just following what I imagine other people are following, or just what I think I should think. I'm always trying to think differently, no matter what it is. I'm trying to just think differently, just see something that I haven't seen before. That I guess makes life worth living for me, anyway. Um, if I'm thinking in the same way I was thinking, 20 years ago or so, that just doesn't make a lot of sense. And yeah, it really just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I'm trying to just be as far outside the box. Like I'll pick something that I just absolutely disagree with. Oh, I think I disagree with, and I'll just try to dig into it to see like what I could what I might imagine. Um, yeah, and that life is the things that are so fascinating. Yesterday or on Sunday, I was in Newark Airport and I was passing some restaurant and some guy says, "Hey, professor, how you doing?" or whatever, and I went, "What?" So I went over. I said, "Wait, are you?" He said, "Yeah, I watch your class on YouTube." So I went over and I started talking to him, and he just talked a little bit about the class and what he sees, and it was cool, right? But we took a photo, and then but he tracked me down yesterday and sent me an email or a couple days ago and said, "Hey, can I get that photo?" So I sent it to him, and I saw that he worked for a company that um, trains people who fight fires. Right? They do this. They set up these scenarios with like maybe an airplane or a bus or a furnace or a stove or a television or a circuit breaker, and they make fires. They do set up training scenarios so that people who are fighting fires can go in and um, can have opportunities to battle a blaze. So it's like you got this big airplane and it's got these propane burners in the airplane, and then it can be used over and over again. But the point being, like somebody who's got to fight fires in airplanes, I got to be able to go in there and practice. And I thought, damn. So I just noticed that I went to his company, site, right? And I thought, that's so fascinating. It's so awesome. It's so cool, right? Just to think all of the things that people are doing in this world to um, to build this immensely complex world that we are living in. So just people like that it's oh man, so fascinating to me. I wish I could live 1,000 lifetimes. Um, anyway, Okay. So, so listen, I think I'm gonna head off here because I think I'm just, unless somebody has a particular question, um, I don't, I, I'm kind of, um, yeah, if someone's got a particular question. Quote Z says, have you noticed a rise in anti-white ideology? No, no, I think the anti-white, just like that critique of the system. Yeah, I can't say I've noticed a rise, no. But I also will say that it's often not anti-white. It's like, huh. Or I would say the most troubling is not troubling. I don't know how to say this. It's not anti, it's not overt. It's like just sort of a, first off, most people, I, man, this is so complicated. It's something like such a simple question that I wouldn't be able to just easily answer, right? The simple answer is no, I don't notice a big rise in it, but I pay attention to it. Lori and I really pay attention to the degree to which people spin criticisms of that sound like they're rooted in justice, social justice, and uplifting certain groups, but they're actually attacks on sometimes backdoor, backhanded attacks on whiteness or white people, which is like some of that's really good and valuable. And it's like, listen, the majority groups always need to have the opportunity to have their sensibilities called into question, right? We need that. Men, we need that. Sometimes I just need, as a man, I just need to be reminded that certain things line up to support my way of being in the world, you know? Certain things, right? I mean, it's not black and white. Sometimes it is, but a lot of times it's not. And mostly in the world that I live in, with the people with whom I surround myself, it's not so clear. But, you know, um, majority groups need that. So white people need it. Not, they don't need to be beaten down by it, because when you're busy beating down white people, you're not seeing, all the ways. I just had a conversation with a former student of mine this morning about his privilege living in this town that we live in. He lives not just a number of blocks away from me. And I was like, he's black. And I'm like, dude, you're so privileged, man. In this town, this college town, it's safe. You live in a great neighborhood. You can walk out your front door at 3 in the morning, and we paid high taxes here, so you have all these services. And if for some reason you need a food bank, it's right down the street. You get a big, huge box of really good food, and you're gonna get that, of course, and like all sorts of things. Just these, man, God, the privilege, And so sometimes when we're busy beating down the majority, he of course, that's not what he's doing at all. But if you're busy beating down the majority and spinning anti-white yarns, we're not looking at other things that impact us. So anyway, um, um, Axel says, I use some of your videos for social engineering examples. Yeah, I could see that. That's cool. Let me just do a couple of things. Um, yeah, so Jay Wilson, like the gender affirming, I think this is what that was Stephen Hassan was saying about the contagion effect. It's like, hey, you want to affirm, but it's important to affirm, but it's also important to question. Like, hey, uh, yeah, be aware of the contagion effect. So, um, so just 30 years ago, no one at my university didn't dare to say get rid of cis men, and it happens now, and we are still largely monolithical racially. Um, it's fine. Hang on, I'm like, yeah, I'd like to have a more of a conversation about that. So John says, do you find political correctness impedes conversations about hard, complex issues? What are some potential consequences? Dude, absolutely impedes people. That's why people have any interest in anything I'm doing in my class, because I'm willing to bust through the political correctness. I'm willing to have conversations that are more real and not following the politically correct line of thinking. It absolutely impedes because you can't, the fear of stepping outside the lines, the fear of saying something wrong, the fear of stepping on a landmine kind of thing. Like people watch me and they think, wow, this guy is just like really brave. I'm not brave. I know where the landmines are. I've been doing it for so long. Like I can make jokes like yesterday with my Saudi student. Um, and I know where, I know what I can't step on. Or that thing I did with Chinese and Korean, like because the Chinese student told my TA to F off. I know what I'm doing there. I I get it. Uh, so it's like that's just a long history of it. Sometimes I make a misstep, or someone thinks I made a misstep and I really didn't. But that's the political correctness stuff. Like you don't know. Not everybody has 30 or 40 years like me to do this day in and day out, and so therefore you don't know where those landmines are, of course, right? Like I wouldn't know if I were doing a different job, and so therefore I just try to be correct. I just gonna try to not step on them, so I'm gonna see, okay, who made a path. Somebody show me a map, and the map says, okay, listen, when you talk about Native American people, now what you want to say is right now, American Indian is preferred by many people, not Native American. But wait, but I thought Indian was a misnomer, right? Because Columbus thought he landed in India, and so therefore said, I'm in New India. It's like, no, it is, but still, indigenous people and who often want to be called red people, or like, wait, but red people, like, wait, how is that? That would be insulting, right? Because what do you mean red people? It's like, well, yeah, it is, but this is one of these words that people take on as a politically powerful word, and so like, oh, all right, so what else? And so give me the map. All right, so this is how you're gonna read it and how you're going to talk about things, and just show me the map. Okay, I'll do that. I'll do it the correct way, the way it is most correct. So you tell me what it is, and that's how I'll do it. And then that's how you would have these conversations, especially if you're going to put cameras in a room and talk about them. So political correctness just gets in the way of all of that, because we can't ever have real, honest, and straightforward conversations where we're stumbling over things and we're questioning things. It's like, wait a minute, red people. So you wanna, like, there's a group, Native American kids out on the Navajo res. I think they were called Red Tribe, and I was listening to them for a while. They're really pretty talented. Um, and I'm like, wait, Red Tribe, like that, but that's an insult, right? Like Redskins. Like, wait, so we want to change the name of the Washington football team from Redskins because it's an insult, but Red Tribe, like what? And so we're always, if you can't have those kinds of conversations, then we can't really go anywhere. And if we shut down the honest exploration, then we don't go anywhere. Well, we do. We go into a place of silence. So anyway, John, that's my answer to you. The consequences are so immense. And you could say, like, well, okay, but with political correctness, so we stop people from saying things that are hurtful or insulting, but like hurtful for whom? Almost always if I would say, like, hey, I go into a room and say, hey, it's hurtful if I hear that if I say X something in this particular community that's hurtful, and people are going to raise their hand, but it's not hurtful to me. So like, I don't know who it's hurtful to, but it's not to me. So members of that community. And so we're losing out on thoughtful communication. Yeah. And that's really, really important in this world, I will say. Um, Green-eyed lady says, "I'm not white. I'm actually beige." Yeah, well, that's the irony, right? Isn't it? That it's how'd we turn? Where'd we get the white from? I actually don't know the history of that, to be honest with you. When did whites enter into the lexicon? How many centuries ago did we start actually using the word white? And why didn't we use a different word? Because clearly I'm not white, right? Huh. I wonder if that came from Asia. I wonder if that came from wearing white makeup and white masks. Like I'm thinking of some of the ancient sort of Chinese theater and so on. I wonder if it's going back a long time. I wonder if it's. I wonder if maybe somebody looked. That's really cool. I have to look that up. The origin of whiteness. Um, Opinionated Matt, seeing it from the outside, there's this perception of the woke movement censoring and canceling everything that doesn't fit the narrative of the world. My question is, how we go past that? Well, first off, the woke movement, it's mostly the people who are most woke are very small. It's a tiny fraction. And so first off, to really start there and realizing that they're not able to cancel everything and censor everything that they don't like. They're really not. And so that's really important. That's the first step in getting past it. The second thing is what you see with the woke movement is lots of people in the so-called woke movement are canceling each other, because they have different narratives. And so when you actually get inside of it, you say, damn, this is really crazy here. Like nobody's on the same team. There's so many teams. And so that's pretty fascinating. That's one way to get past it. To see that first off. And then once we see that, then we can just keep moving forward and challenging people, because it's not like one big, huge group of people. It's lots of different groups and subgroups. And then once you start challenging one sort of thing over here, one particular group, another group will be like, yeah, I'm going to challenge that also. And then we can also get challenged more easily, whatever it is that I think. Triple Z says it seems it's okay to be politically incorrect to certain identities, but not to others. Well, some groups don't have as much power as other groups. So like, Native peoples here in the United States anyway. I always say Canada. Canada is actually a little more advanced than we are in dealing with Native issues. Not advanced, but they're just more aware of it on a regular basis. Surprisingly, not surprisingly, but they just are. Just the conversation about Native peoples, the indigenous peoples, it's more part of a conversation. I think here in the U.S., I think because of slavery, Black Americans really take up a lot of space in the conversation. And Latin Americans and Mexican Americans also take up a lot of space. And so that's space that people may give toward indigenous peoples, the native peoples in the US, but they don't. But in Canada, you don't have the history of slavery, and you don't have the history of an immigrant group who really wasn't an immigrant group that had their land sort of taken away and then became an immigrant group, which is what we see with Mexicans or Chicanos or people of Hispanic origin in the whole part of the western part of the United States. So you don't have that. And so what you have in Canada is largely indigenous peoples there who become a place where Canadians can focus more energy. And so anyway, going back to your question though, it's, yeah, there's certain identities or certain groups that don't have as much power. And so they don't have the ability to kind of push back. And then it's okay. It becomes then by default okay to question them and push them and so on because they don't have as much power to fight back, let's say. But you know that's changing, right? I mean, it's all part of the triple Z. No, I don't. It's not that I don't believe in race. Race is a sociological construct that we have to group the human population. We're just going to group ourselves somehow. We're going to group them, us. Let me say us. Human beings, we make sense of the world by talking about groups. And so you have a population of people, you're going to separate them by certain things. We just are. Like, you're the group that lives in this region of the world, and you're the group that lives in that region, and you're in this nation, and you're in that nation, and whatever it is, we're gonna do that. We tall people and short people, like it is it is. It's how it works. And so in our minds, we build these categories, and then we make statements about the human condition based on the categories. And racial categories is one that really emerged in the 18th century in a serious way, and then much more in the 19th century. But as people are traveling around the world, and we're and encountering people who look very different from one another, and then people naturally start to divide or categorize the human population into different groups. So science did, right? So how many different human groups are there? And then we start referring to them as races. But the problem is it works in a very, very kind of general sense. But once you start digging into what we're really talking about, it's really hard to make these fine distinctions. But we can talk about ancestry groups, which is what I use all the time, is ancestry, because there are things that we can say about people whose ancestors lived in the subcontinent of Asia or the Indian subcontinent, right? Or ancestors who lived in the the Philippines and Indonesia and the Australian Aborigines and the Aboriginal people of New Zealand, this kind of thing. So there are certain things that we can say. So, but not a lot. So therefore it's not about believing or not believing. It's just like, well, it's not very useful as a concept. So most of us in the world of sociology and anthropology, we kind of lobby that we should really stop using it altogether. But we can't, you know what I mean? Because me, for example, I have to say something about people. And it's not, I'm a sociologist, so I can't, who am I going to talk about? Every single individual? It's no, you want to put people together and say like, hey, let me make some generalizable statement about these 5 people over here that's different than those 5 people over there. But that's what makes like just life interesting. So anyway, that's what I would say. Yeah, the skeletal structure of different races, Triple Z said. Uh, yeah. Hang on, Jay. I'm not seeing what I was raised to say. Dawn H says, Dawn H says, I was raised to say sir and ma'am, and when stating an elder's name to put Miss or Mr. in front as a sign of respect. It's been hard to break myself of that. Well, yeah, but I don't know. Maybe you don't really have to. I say sir and ma'am all the time. Yeah, I mean, maybe we don't have to break ourselves of certain things, you know. I mean, some things maybe we do. Maybe we want to evolve, we want to change. I have a hard time breaking myself when someone says I want to be referred to as they. My pronouns are gender pronouns are they and them. I'm like, all right, man, good luck. All right, I'll do my best, but you look like a he or you look like a she, and so therefore I'm gonna F this up, I'm sure. And I'm pretty open about that. Like, I think it's awesome. They, them. More of us should use they, them. But it's really difficult for me. Like it's not that I won't. It's easy for a 5-year-old. You tell them once, and they're like, all right, they. My friend Marcy uses they, and like they never mess it up. You know what I mean? But I would call Marcy she 100 times before it would be in my thick skull. And not that I'm lazy. Maybe I'm like, I don't know. I'm doing my best, you know. Yeah. Let me just look at a couple more things, and then I think I'm gonna go. Yeah, race is more of a political division based on physical characteristics. Yeah, by and large, you could say that. You can cut it up in 100 different ways, but in the end, politics is about power, and it's about who's going to have the power to make the decision that we're going to use, but what we're going to use to refer to somebody. Yeah, it's really interesting. Uh, uh, Dawn, Jay, Jason, I'm a bartender, so now I just call everyone babe or yeah, pal. Yeah, pal. Uh, huh. Yeah. I think as long as it's a good faith effort, honestly, that's all I care about. Just a good faith effort. Do our best. When people tell me what they want to be called, I'm gonna do my best. And I really am. And and it's okay. Even if they want to be called something really it just doesn't makes no sense. I'll do my best. And that's the most anyone can ask for me. And if you want more, then I I could do nothing I can say. Yeah. Uh, yeah. So that's maybe it's easier for me. Maybe I have more street cred because it's clear that I'm doing my best. But sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes I meet people and I call them, say something to them, and maybe I call somebody bro, and I'm like, hey man, I'm not your bro, and I'm like, bro, I'm sorry, bro, I did it again, oh god, okay, and I'm just like, what can I do? What can I do? They don't know me, and so I just have to just say okay, and just walk away with all humility intact, and it's okay. Yeah, I think you can't. It's best we can do. All right, listen. So I'm gonna go. Uh, okay, my fiance and I wanted to get married at the public garden, but they told us it was booked up. All right, man, dude, these dad jokes are really exactly why I don't have kids, man. I'd be telling those jokes all the time, and my kid. All right, so listen, I'm gonna head out. Um, Yeah. So let me head out, get ready. Class, I'll be very interested to see what happens tomorrow and how we do, and then we have one more class. I don't know what we're gonna do next Tuesday. We'll wait and see. Um, okay, everybody, I'm gonna log off. Jeff, thanks for holding everything down. And friend, I like that. Now, No, friend. Green-eyed lady. I love just call people friend. Yeah, I've tried to do that, and it's been difficult for me. I somehow just it's easier to call people dog or dude than friend, and I wish I could just rewrite my brain. Okay. Anyway, I'm really gonna head out. Thanks everybody, and we will catch you on the flip side. See you tomorrow, and then we'll see where we go from. And by the way, Irvin's gonna be on next Wednesday, so he was gonna be on today, but Jeff wasn't around, and I wasn't gonna be home, and it was gonna be really difficult. So he and I will be on together on Wednesday, and we can have an Irvin conversation, which I think will be really cool. All right, man. Okay, see you all. Let me see if I can turn this thing off. Here we go. Be well.